All right, welcome on into the Wolverine recruiting show. Clayton Sayfie here with EJ Holland. We're going to break down this last week, a busy one for Michigan football recruiting, heading in now to another quiet period after a super busy June. We will start talking about the final weekend in June of official visits that happened last weekend. A smaller visitor list than the weekend prior for Victor's weekend, but still an important one. EJ, let's talk about some of those guys and what Michigan was able to do on its final opportunity here to host guys in the month of June.
Yeah, the final official visit weekend resulted in a future cast pick for three-star Idaho tight end Colston Loveland. He's not a prospect that, we've talked about a ton, but he is one of the more intriguing names this cycle. Again, he's way out in Idaho. I don't know when the last time Michigan landed a guy from Idaho, but I assume it's been a while. Not a ton of talent out in that state. So I think he's another guy that's, a gem out there. He led the state in receptions, receiving yards, you name it. He's the most dominant player out there. And he has, again, a lot of potential as a receiving tight end. He's added some weight to play some more inline. So if he does end up siding with Michigan, I think it would definitely be a really, really good ad to pair with Marlon Klein. So they did a great job with Colston Loveland. They also really did a nice job with three-star cornerback Jaleel Florence out of San Diego. This is a kid that Courtney Morgan had recruited at Fresno State. I think Michigan's trending in the right direction. Jaleel didn't come out and say it, right away, but I do feel like Michigan has the edge for him. I haven't put in a pick because he does want to see some more local schools like Washington and Oregon, but it's unclear exactly where he stands on the board right now. I think Michigan may be pushing the hardest. And like I said, that Courtney Morgan connection should help. His father is from Chicago, so he's familiar with the Midwest. So I thought they did a great job with Jaleel Florence. And I also thought they did a really good job with Jacoby Albert, four-star athlete out of Alabama that could play wide receiver or defensive back at the next level. I think SEC teams Auburn and Kentucky will be tough to beat in that race, but Michigan definitely established itself as a true contender in that race. So those were some of the guys they did really well with over the weekend.
Yeah, so, like we said, kind of smaller, less eventful, but still a future cast coming out of that final visit weekend in June. And, Michigan's picked up 5 commits over the last couple of weeks here after what was, a pretty long drought. Like you mentioned, the future cast pick there, but then there's also some future cast picks that are in for you on guys that you already had in, as well as guys that are considering Michigan, heavily considering Michigan, that are set to decide soon. So Michigan could have some commitments on the horizon here. What do you think about that with some of the decisions coming up, and where does Michigan stand with some of these guys?
Yeah, so I just mentioned Colston Loveland putting in a pick for him. He wants to make a decision here pretty soon, so I wouldn't be surprised if Michigan uh, gets him before the end of July. Miles Pollard has locked in a date. I cannot tell you what that date is, but he has locked in a date. I don't know. I'm going to let him put it out on Twitter if he decides to put it out. But he will be deciding in the month of July. And I feel pretty good about where Michigan stands with him, even though he just took official visits to Oklahoma and Auburn. I think Michigan has maintained his lead. So it'll be interesting to see if anything changes between now and his decision date. Three-star athlete Dylan Tatum out of Houston. I'm sorry, Dylan Tatum. Dylan Bell out of Houston, Texas. Getting the Dylans confused. Dylan Bell out of Houston, Texas is a guy that is looking to commit soon as well. I thought Michigan made a really, really strong impression on his official visit. Recently notched SEC offers from Georgia and Texas A&M, but Michigan has been on him for so long. They got FaceTime with him this month on 4 separate occasions. He's the recruit other than Will Johnson that they saw the most this summer. So I think that I still feel pretty good about the future cast I put in at the beginning of June. And I just mentioned him, Dylan Tatum, 4-star athlete out of West Bloomfield. Still torn between Michigan and Michigan State. I don't think that one's an easy pick for either side, but he's he wanted to make a decision in July. I believe he will finally make a decision in July. I mean, basically every weekend he bounced back and forth between Michigan and Michigan State, and it seems like there's no true outcome from any of those visits. So I think Dylan's taking some time away from social media and interviews to really hone in on his decision, so he could, definitely pull in July as he's been scheduled to do. And then you have guys that have always said one more to mention that has a firm commitment date is Mario Eugenio, Rivals defensive lineman out of the Tampa area, was on campus for Victor's weekend. And I thought that Michigan did a really nice job there. He bonded well with Will Johnson, with the coaching staff, and I don't think he's afraid to leave home. So I think Mario Eugenio is a guy that could definitely hop on board for the Wolverines. So those are guys that are definitely have set dates, or are definitely looking to commit in July. And then you have other guys that have been more broad, that have said, I want to commit before the end of summer. So that could be July, that could be August. And those guys are 5-star defensive tackle Walter Nolan. He put out that ominous tweet saying, I'm ready to shut down my recruitment. So I think he's going to decide before his senior season starts, whether that's this month or August. We'll see. Michigan obviously hosted him for Victor's weekend and remains a true dark horse in that recruitment. Dion Walker keeps creepily moving up his timeline. At first, it was the National Signing Day in December, and then it was maybe September, and now it's maybe August. So Michigan had a chance to host him on multiple occasions this summer. I think they've kind of moved into the pole position for him. Obviously, Michigan has done a really good job recruiting out of Cass Tech, and he just has a lot of familiarity with the program. Clinkscale was on him super early at Kentucky, and they have a really good relationship. He has a really good one with Ron Bellamy as well. So I think those guys can end up pulling Dion Walker. So those are some of the other guys that, could decide in July, or maybe a little this summer. But either way, those string of guys, Loveland, Bell, Eugenio, Pollard, all those guys could come within the next week or two.
Yeah, so it's been an eventful last month, and could be even more eventful in the next couple days, couple weeks to come, with some of these guys making decisions after they were able to go out and see different schools over the last month as well. So obviously now their timelines kind of being a little bit more set, and like you said, a couple guys with some firm dates already. So be on the lookout at thewolverine.com for all of that, if Michigan's able to close with maybe a few or any of those guys. EJ, the last thing, you were out in Seattle on Sunday to see Michigan's final satellite camp, or really their final day of satellite camp. So some of the staff members were spread out around the country. They were in Las Vegas, they were in Pittsburgh, but the big one was in Seattle with Jim Harbaugh heading out there, Josh Gaddis, offensive coordinator, and then co-offensive coordinator and offensive line coach Sharon Moore, who the YouTube viewers see pictured there with Harbaugh. You were out there. We've been to a few of these. We've had a ton of takeaways. I think it's been really interesting to watch this kind of new look Michigan staff in person, evaluating recruits, getting to shake hands and talk to parents, talk to coaches, talk to recruits. Finally in person again. What were some of your takes from the Seattle one?
Yeah, it was the final satellite camp of the summer. Michigan's only given 10 evaluation days, so they took advantage of them. They immediately left Sunday morning to get out to an early 8:30 a.m. start for this camp. Obviously, they got the benefit of the time change, but remember, they still had official visitors, so they had to zoom over to Seattle, and they got to see some priority guys along the offensive line. One pictured here, Josh Connerly, Rivals 100 offensive lineman, is one of the most important targets left this cycle. I think it was just good for Michigan to get some face time with him. I talked to Josh Connerly Sr., his father, and he told me that it meant everything to him for Michigan to come out here, primarily to see Connerly, primarily to get some face time with the family, since Connerly hasn't had a chance to visit. This was their first face-to-face interaction. I know he really enjoyed getting to meet Jim Harbaugh and Sharon Moore, as did his father. And then he also had some more targets. Mark Naboo Three-star offensive lineman who is quickly rising up the board, just backed out of his verbal pledge to Washington, made an unofficial visit to Michigan, is looking to be back for an official visit to Michigan. And so he had a chance to work closely with Moore and got his second interaction with the Michigan staff. And then you had 2023 cornerback Caleb Presley, who came away with an offer. He is a top 250 guy for next cycle and one that is going to be a priority target moving forward. But overall, there's an increase of talent in the Pacific Northwest, even guys that weren't able to make it, like Tobias Merriweather, Rivals 250 wide receiver, who's closer to Portland than he is Seattle. But he was coming out of his official visit to Stanford, wasn't able to make it. Well, Jim Harbaugh and Josh Gaddis, as soon as this camp was over, ran to their cars and had a 2 hour long FaceTime call with Tobias Merriweather. And so they're making the area a priority. Again, there's a lot of talent coming up through there and a lot of talent that's willing to leave that region of the United States. And so I think Michigan kind of weirdly gives a similar vibe as Washington, just with all the trees and everything. I feel like, those kids have mentioned that they kind of like the vibe, they like the feel of Ann Arbor, reminds them of home a little bit, a home away from home. And so I think Michigan has an opportunity to get some guys from out that way.
Interesting with the trees. I mean,
yeah, trees. You go to Texas, there's no trees. So, I mean, you go up to, especially if you go up even towards northern Michigan, it kind of resembles the Pacific Northwest.
Definitely, yeah. I think the government planted a ton of trees about 100 years ago, and there are basically millions of trees up there. And also Jim Harbaugh, coaching at Stanford, and coaching for the 49ers, I think probably gives him some ties out west as well. And we've kind of seen that more so earlier maybe in his career, that he was able to relate with some of those guys that grew up watching him coach up there. But that is interesting in Michigan, looking for and they've always kind of done this, but recruiting nationally and using the ties they have as a national brand to take advantage of that and try to get talent from wherever they can get it. Obviously prioritizing in-state, but also looking around the country for the best players, and seem to be doing that in Seattle. And man, hats off to the Michigan staff for basically no sleep all of June, doing all that, capping it off with a flight out west to Seattle on the last day of satellite camps. So yeah, that basically does it for some of the news this week. Obviously, could be some news ahead, as we talked about when discussing some guys with some upcoming decisions. So keep it locked at thewolverine.com for full coverage of all those. Any new commits, we'll have tons of stuff up over at thewolverine.com. Use the promo code BLUE60 for 2 months of our premium content, absolutely free, and we'll see you over there.